And a very good morning to you this Wednesday morning. We have a show for you today. The legendary Australian out-half Stephen Larkham is part of Michael Cheika's backroom team. He's going to join us just after 8 o'clock to talk about his career, to talk about those slightly dark arts that Ireland have used in the second test against Australia to prevent Israel Folau from being Israel Folau. Loads more besides as well, the state of the game generally, and whatever you're having yourself. If you've got a question for Stephen Larkham, you can tweet us here at Off The Ball AM is the specific Twitter handle for this show, or of course you can just follow us on Twitter. And make sure you turn on your notifications wherever you follow us on social media so that whenever we go live, you'll get a little ping going, oh, the lads are at work, they're doing some stuff. How are you?
Very well.
We are working today.
We are working very, very hard today.
We have John Duggan with us, live from Russia. He's going to talk to us about the game that he was at last night, which was the Senegal game. These games are coming thick and fast. I'm kind of forgetting some of the games. So Senegal won last night, 2-0.
2-1.
2-1 against Poland. Poland scored a late...
Poland scored a late goal.
You were in the money because of that?
Well, all of our viewers of World Cup Daily would have been in the money. Boyle Sports, for our charity bet yesterday, gave us enhanced odds of 8-1 on Senegal to win and both teams to score.
That's not bad.
And, you could say that I tore the living room down almost when Poland scored that goal to bring it back to 2-1 yesterday. So
like 86 minutes. They're the best.
Yeah, and then Senegal proceeded to give me minor heart palpitations because they had a corner and Sadio Mane was like, I'm not going to take this short at all. I'm going to pump this right into the box. And sure enough, the Poland keeper grabs it and they get another opportunity to try and level the game up, which would have been completely undeserved. And, John Duggan managed to get himself another slice of history. Forrest Gump does it again.
The 2-2.
Yeah.
And it happened.
Well, no, the slice of history that is Senegal winning once again. The only African team not to lose in the tournament so far. John Duggan hasn't seen Forrest Gump, by the way.
I heard that in the show yesterday. I was like, what?
I know, it's
we should
incredible.
Send him like a Google Drive or whatever the equivalent of a modern day DVD is.
He's too busy doing interesting things in real life, like watching Senegal win World Cup games and becoming the kind of free man of Ulyanovsk down on the Volga River. That's what he's been at over the last couple of weeks. He hasn't really had time to watch cinematic beauty like Forrest Gump. He's just busy being Forrest Gump, really.
We've done 160 of these shows and I've just forgotten to turn on my microphone properly, to actually just plug it on. It's like...
So basically the start of the show was just swathes of silence and me responding to the silence.
Yeah. Atmospheric.
I've done that before.
Responding to other people's silences.
Just like silence. Did somebody say something? And it's like, no, nobody said anything.
Also coming up on today's show, we're going to do that. We're going to do Keith Andrews. He's going to pick the Ireland team that would have played in the World Cup if suddenly, somehow, we'd managed to Denmark our way into the tournament. It's one of those kind of lost moments in your life where you're like, who would actually have played for Ireland? What system would we have played? And it's not like what Martin O'Neill would have played, it's what he would play, right?
And it's a very enticing system. I'm liking the look of his team. I can't reveal it just yet, but there's snazzy little graphics done up and everything to display Keith Andrews' team. It's actually got me excited for the future of Irish football because it isn't entirely fantasy to the point where this team will never happen. There is an opportunity that this team can happen in the Nations League.
Not while Martin O'Neill's in charge. It's unlikely to happen. JD in Russia, Stephen Larkham. Fantasy Ireland, that's Keith Andrews' team, and Round Ireland, Volvo Round Ireland yacht race. We're going to speak with Dave McHugh about that. Dave obviously sailed in the Olympics for Ireland. He'll explain to us a little bit about why you should all be tuning in for the next little while to the unbelievable scenes of the Volvo Round Ireland yacht race. That's coming up just after 9 o'clock today. But I guess we should start with the papers.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie. Championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
I haven't read as many of the newspapers today as I normally would because I spent most of the morning luxuriating in Stephen Larkham highlight reel videos. That guy was good.
Yeah, there's
like beautiful balance and movement and suddenly whew, like a greased shit through the gate. And all of a sudden it's like 15 defenders in his wake. But also like the ability kind of 4 defenders around him and suddenly it's like he's on the other side of them. Miraculously, like he's kind of just swiveled around and passed through. Matter has disappeared. He's broken the time-space continuum. And then it's late pass to somebody who burst in. They won the World Cup in 99, obviously, with Australia.
Yeah, I'm not sure, did your YouTube rabbit hole bring you to the video promoting Australian rugby, which is basically just swathes of people saying, don't kick it. Like you got George Green saying, don't kick it. You've got the head coach at the time, saying don't kick it.
Up the wire.
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember.
Eddie Jones was his head coach, obviously, in 2003 when they reached their World Cup final.
But yeah, that South Africa moment in '99 is probably one of the things he's going to be most remembered for, that drop goal.
Do you explain that?
Well, the don't kick it scenario is almost something that kind of pervaded itself into reality. And we were chatting before we came on air about this movement from full-back to out-half. And I don't have a great recollection of the '99 World Cup, but I had actually thought that was kind of the narrative going into the semi-final, that he had been stationed at out-half either for the semi-final or very early days in that World Cup. And while it was quite close in proximity to that match, it was a bit earlier in his career. So I'd always thought that, the drop goal to win that semi-final against South Africa to send him through to the World Cup final, which they obviously go on to win, I thought that this had come at kind of like a weird moment where Larkham had just been stationed at out-half for this game, and this game only, and this was his first ever venture at out-half. But it's not as poetic as that, but it's borderline. It's kind of close.
1998, he'd been a fullback for his first 12 caps, and then 98, I think it's around that season, so it's a year out from the World Cup, they go, oh, maybe you can play 10. Like, maybe it's not that big a deal to switch from 15 to 10.
It's almost as if there's like an exact parallel in Irish rugby right now between a person who can play 15 and 10.
Yeah. So, and it'll be interesting to hear what he has to say about some of those things. Anyway, the drop goal, basically what happens is in the quarter-final, Yanni de Beer kicks 5 drop goals in one game for South Africa. They're the defending champions from 95 in 99. In the semi-final, they're up against Australia. It's a draw match. There's a line out in the halfway line. One of the centres chugs it up. They flip it back to Larkham, and basically from close enough to the halfway line, first drop goal ever in international rugby for him, straight through the post. Thanks very much.
That's it.
And they win the game.
First drop goal ever. I thought it was his first game at out-half ever. It's, first drop goal. But that's what that ad
Nobody on the team had ever scored a drop goal in international rugby.
Really?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I guess
they were up against like the drop goal master and De Beer. Oh, such a boring team that South Africa team were. So, justice prevailed. Right, let's take you through the newspapers this morning. Schmidt has to be coach after Japan. This is Robbie Henshaw asked about who should be the coach, and like current player goes, yeah, current coach is really good. We think he should definitely stay. Because that's not what you're going to say. Nah, I think he should really. We're all a bit bored of Joe at this point. We could do with a fresh voice. Is that what someone's going to say?
Well, it will be hilarious to see would it be picked up as irony or not. It's like the Grand Slam was good and all, but we don't like him, and he should leave. If somebody ever said that would be kind of a crowning glory of irony in a press conference.
Dele Alli is a big doubt for England, according to Paul Joyce in Volgograd. His condition will be closely monitored in the next few days, but he's unlikely to train to avoid aggravating the injury, which obviously is a big opportunity for Ruben Loftus-Cheek or Fabian Delph, but Delph might not be available.
Yeah, his wife is heavily pregnant with their expected third child, so he might be flying home to England for the arrival of a new baby.
Magic story coming from WLR as well in the aftermath of Derek McGrath's decision to step down. County board told to resign. A prominent Waterford GAA sponsor has claimed the county is a laughingstock and that the board are to blame and should resign en bloc. This is Tom Murphy, who has supplied cars to Waterford managers and acted as a fundraiser. He claimed officials showed zero respect to the players of Derek McGrath, the manager who resigned on Monday. You got better quotes in the inside of the Examiner, which we may as well do now, we?
Yeah, may as well. Before we get into what else happened in the Irish Examiner. So these, as you say, happened on WLR yesterday. Zero respect, you mentioned. So Murphy says he personally pledged to raise 30 grand in the run-up to last year's All-Ireland final and claimed that officials offered little support in that regard. He said those guys have been shown zero respect by the Waterford County Board, who should resign en bloc. I'm sick and tired of it. I feel so bad today that I might never go to a hurling match again. You just take our players. They've been treated as a second-class county. We're a laughingstock. He goes on to say it's a sad, sad day. If they got the finger out last October when this thing started, they could have something ready. That's in relation to the Walsh Park scenario. Of course, Waterford didn't play a single home game in the round-robin stage of the Munster Hurling Championship this year, and that could be viewed as being severely detrimental to their chances and ended up getting them knocked out of the championship. They say this life, and this is to continue the quotes, they say this life consists of 3 types of people. People who make things happen, people who let things happen, and people who don't know the hell what's happening. They do not know what the hell is happening. And then the final paragraph here from Paul Keane's piece in the Examiner.
What the hell is happening, Tal?
Murphy said the board's response to the problem was like the farmer putting twine on the gate instead of putting a lock on it. I'm sick of it. We deserve more. our players deserve more. So no cars for Waterford until the county board resign on block. That's what I'm taking from that.
Back page of the Irish Independent this morning. Salah out as Neymar a concern for Brazil. This is the news that Neymar has a bit of an injury issue. Maybe this is where Brazil actually find their best team, and it involves Neymar being on the bench. A lot of suggestions that Neymar was more interested in Team Neymar than Team Brazil in the first game. Looking for some YouTube highlight reels was how Duffer put it on TV.
I'm not sure is that fair, to be honest, to say that he was like looking to improve his own. He wants to win. He wants Brazil to win, and he
wants Neymar to win. And if Brazil also win as part of that, then happy days.
No, he wants Brazil to win because he knows that Neymar will win as a result of Brazil winning, and he also feels.
What if Coutinho scores the winner, or somebody else who's not Neymar?
I genuinely believe the whole Neymar thing is based on the fact that Neymar just fully believes he's completely the best player and he has the best chance of Brazil winning, him doing it all on his own.
But that might not be true. So he might believe this nonsense.
It is, but it's the reasons behind this. The reasons behind this isn't because he wants some sort of YouTube highlight reel or because he wants more Instagram followers or anything like that. It's such an easy stick to beat Neymar with. He just has a ginormous ego, which you could construe as wanting more Instagram followers, but actually it is because the ego manifests itself in the way that he feels he's the best player.
You're talking about Ronaldo, though. You're not talking about Neymar. So far, Ronaldo's actually proven that he is capable of doing almost that, like, across the course of his career in really amazing teams. Neymar has been like the third part of a triumvirate where the other two were Messi and Suarez, and then he's gone. Okay, so he got injured and we're not really quite sure what might have happened with PSG for the rest of the season, but let's just see Neymar be the Maradona-style player who can drag a team to glory, or actually just be a good teammate.
Yeah, but I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not disagreeing that he hasn't done a Ronaldo. Clearly, there's acres and acres between them when it comes to greatness and when it comes to individual greatness. I'm saying the reasons why Neymar is a ball hog, is taking those free kicks, is because he really believes, rightly or wrongly, probably wrongly, that he is the best chance Brazil have of winning this World Cup. It's nothing to do with wanting a YouTube highlight reel.
Well, they're kind of the same thing. But anyway, let's very briefly, here's Jamie Carragher spitting out his column today. Sterling not suited to style or system, Rashford is. That's Jamie Carragher, who obviously, knows Raheem Sterling pretty well. Of course, Raheem Sterling betrayed Liverpool. Jamie Carragher, Liverpool through and through. So is Raheem Sterling really incapable of playing?
Raheem Sterling just spat in the face of Liverpool, didn't he?
Nonsensical. Okay, so that's the Salah story. There's a picture of a rugby player playing for Perpignan. Gavin, Cluxton will make his own call on the Leinster final. So, bit of mind games ahead of the Laois match, just to keep Laois on their toes. Will they be preparing for Cluxton's kickouts or not? We don't know.
Mind games, yeah. Basically, it's the least mundane thing Jim Gavin said, so we have to print it, is kind of how those conferences go. Like, he also talked about the Croke Park pitch and complaining about concerts being in such close proximity to matches and stuff.
A fair point.
Which is absolute gold dust when it comes to Jim Gavin. Getting him talking about those bloody tiles that go down on the ground of Croke Park is kind of like Jose Mourinho going on a post-match rant about extraordinary circumstances. I
forgot, of course, that last year there was a black card for Dean Rock, and it was because the concert had happened the week before he lost his footing. Remember that? Remember Dean Rock? And that was like, well, that's where this comes from. This is like last year's story. It was Dean Rock got black carded very early on in one of the games.
Was it Monaghan? Or was it the Kildare game?
And it was the week after, it could have been the Kildare game, and it was the week after a concert, and he was like...
Right after U2?
He slipped.
Bloody Bono. Bono ruins everything.
Slipped because of it. And then the Munster football final. A first Munster football championship match in Páirc Uí Chaoimh may not even be half full. This is according to the former Cork footballer Joe Kavanagh, a beautiful footballer in his day. He reckons that there could be less than 20,000 at the Cork-Kerry game because the hurling has stolen the thunder, and also because Cork are going to get hammered. He doesn't say that second bit.
Well, there's a suspicion that they might get hammered. They probably won't
Among
get
Cork
hammered.
football fans, I'd say they're a bit concerned that they might get hammered, which is probably the game where they put it up to Kerry for 72 minutes instead of 40 minutes, which is what they've done in recent times.
Yeah, I think you're bang on with that. I think it's going to be a 6 or 7 point win for Kerry, as Darragh O'Shea's predicted today. And that's what it's going to be. It's not going to be an absolute trouncing in the guise of what happened in Killarney last year.
What was the story? 122 or something last year, was it?
Something like that. I can't even remember. It was such it was just a throttling, really. It was, and Kerry, it clearly was detrimental to Kerry as well come the end of the championship. But Kerry need this as much as Cork do, a 6 or 7 point close game.
Say it ain't so, Mo. World Cup heartbreak for Salah as Russian juggernaut rumbles on. Anthony Daly, David McGrath's approach was laced with class and dignity. Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody agrees with that. Irish women's close glory for Cork teenager Sarah Byrne is that's Sarah kissing the trophy there, and it's no accident Cork Clare have reached the Munster final, says Kieran Shannon. I wonder, is this? I haven't seen Kieran Shannon's piece today, but I will make a point of reading it as soon as I can because they're always brilliant. Is this in connection with the? It's actually more about stats than the specifics of the scheduling, because he's already written about the specifics of the scheduling, and that was a very interesting piece during the week as well. The one final one from me, and that's the front of the Irish Times today. Relentless Russia give Egypt the runaround. This is the 3-1 win for Russia against Egypt. Mohamed Salah's penalty, scant consolation for them. Russians not quite ready to raise the bar for the big match, says Keith Duggan's piece. Keith Duggan was in Nizhny Novgorod.
Yep, correct.
And then Larkham signals Australia will shuffle for a final test in Sydney. We'll talk with Stephen Larkham in about 10 minutes' time.
On the back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning, it's pitch battle. Avoid summer gigs in Croker, pleads Jim Gavin. Surely that's a dive, Jesse. There's a picture of Jesse Lingard and Jordan Pickford on inflatable unicorns in a swimming pool somewhere in Russia as they lapped up their training regime.
Inflatable what?
What?
Inflatable what?
Unicorns.
How do you say it?
Unicorns.
Two separate words, uni and corn.
What?
Unicorns.
It's exactly what I said.
Is it?
Yeah, unicorn. There's nothing funny about the way I say that. Ali's a major doubt for Panama Showdown. What? It's one word. I know that it's one word. Ali's a major doubt for the Panama Showdown. We can bring you the back page of the Mail in the UK as well. This morning there's an interesting story here. Why? Shock horror. Harry Kane's a football hero we can be proud of. I'm not sure is that a sarcastic shock horror or a serious shock horror from the Daily Mail there, but we leave that one up to yourself. On the back page of the Herald this morning, it's Gavin saying, I have faith in Evan. Dubs boss confident Comerford can deliver under leash pressure. You've also got that Russia 3, Egypt 1 scoreline from last night. The back page of the Mirror is all on Neymar. Neymar's World Cup fear. Brazil striker a major doubt as he quits training, and Gavin prays for no rain because of the surface on Sunday. Fears that the surface is bad enough as it is. If there's going to be added moisture in there, it's going to be absolutely disastrous. Let's show you the front page of the Mirror in the UK this morning. More on the World Cup. Harry, up and win it for us, Daddy. Everyone loves England's World Cup hero, especially daughter Ivy. It's a little bit of a trend here, isn't there? Harry Kane, Captain Harry. Captain Kane, sorry, Prince Harry.
Smoking cigarettes and watching Captain.
Basically, the English press love Harry Kane.
They do, yeah.
Can't understand why. On the back page of the Irish Daily Star, it's Cry Always Me. Neymar injury sees Brazil plunged into a World Cup crisis.
They're not. They're going to be a better team without him. They're definitely going to be a better team without him. This is Patrick Ewing all over. This is the Ewing theory writ large. This is the final iteration of it. Finally, all those years, Bill Simmons was like, ooh, finally, Brazil might actually have a chance of winning the World Cup if Neymar's out. I'm saying they've got a better chance without him.
Right, okay. That's very interesting when you look at that result against Germany in 2014. Literally the last big match that Neymar missed for Brazil. How did that game finish up there?
A crappy Brazil team, a completely soufflé Brazil team, as opposed to the current team, where they've actually got some...
Soufflé. At the heart of the defence was Miranda, who got shoved lightly by the Switzerland attacker on Sunday evening. And, like, speaking of soufflé, it was just like perfect soufflé, the way it just crumbled. Perfect.
Yeah.
Soufflé doesn't crumble, really.
It collapses.
It just collapsed beautifully. It was just like a little nudge from the Switzerland attacker, and the soufflé just went down like a Michelin star restaurant, and Switzerland levelled the game. That's exactly what this Brazil team is.
The soufflé went down like a Michelin star restaurant. Okay, let's move on.
Sarri wants Strees at Blues. Maurizio Sarri has made Belgium A's Strees Mertens his next up target if he becomes the next Chelsea boss. That's an odd story there, isn't it? He's not even the Chelsea boss and he's already talking about targets for his club. The back page of the Sun is he's not world-class chess yet. Kane's challenged. Harry Kane boldly claimed there are no limits as he aims to topple Cristiano Ronaldo as the world's best. We've got the Evan Comerford story there as well. He's the keeper of faith, according to Jim Gavin. Then it's cricket leading the way in the UK this morning. Master Blasters, Hales and Bairstow lead the way as England power to world record 481. That's against Australia. 481 for 6 was their scoreline yesterday, as you can see in the back page of The Guardian. And also here, Panama Cap, Loftus-Cheek in line to replace injured Ali.
All right, time for us to turn our attention to rugby ahead of the third test this weekend. We'll go to Australia in just one moment to speak with Stephen Larkham. Here's Brian O'Driscoll speaking first, though, on why last Saturday's game would have been a very tough watch for Sean Cronin.
It's pretty uncomfortable viewing if you're Sean Cronin.
Oh, I'd say he hated every minute
Whatever,
of last week.
whatever Joe Schmidt's thoughts are, two guys have gotten their opportunity and played very well. Scannell was really good for the 50-odd minutes. Thought Rob Herring was very good in the first test, and save for his first line-out throw, which was stolen. I thought it made a really good impact. He's been very busy, carried well. He's not a huge man, but the one upside is that Sean Cronin offers something different than the other three hookers. So whether that
do you buy the theory that come World Cup time he'll be the number 2?
Well, yeah, I think, well, do you know what? In a perfect world, you want 4 hookers pushing hard for 3 places. You don't know, another year on, Rory Best,
sure.
Is he pieced together at the moment, strapped up? He's a warrior, but, you have to be able to fall back with the thought process that there might be one of those 4 injured. So it'd be great to have the other 3 getting lots of game time.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I really don't know what Joe Schmidt is thinking. I think having Sean Cronin's explosiveness is a real addition to any bench. If you need to chase the game and you need to get over an advantage line, he's a real go-to guy.
Think how angry he is right now. He's going to run the 100 metres in 5 seconds the next time he plays. So we'll see.
Well, do you know what the pick is going to be in the 23 now this weekend? Does he stick with the winning formula, or does he go to Sean on the bench or start him? It'll be very interesting.
Yeah, it will be very interesting, and we await with bated breath to see exactly what the Ireland team will be to face the weekend. Our next guest is probably pretty interested in that too. I'm delighted to say we've got Stephen Larkham, part of the Australian backroom team, with us this morning. Stephen, good morning to you. How you doing?
Afternoon, evening for us, yeah.
Yeah. Listen, thanks a million for doing this for us. It's a pretty interesting time at the moment. It's been a brilliant test series so far. You guys obviously clearly the dominant team in the first game. Ireland maybe a little bit cuter than we were in the first test and the second test, so it's perfectly balanced.
It is, yeah, and it's a sold-out test this weekend, so it's going to be a good atmosphere, and I think... we had a bit of a slip-up on the weekend. We obviously played okay for our first test and had a 6-day turnaround from Super Rugby into the first test, and pretty impressed with the way the boys played that game. I think we let ourselves down on the weekend, and I know Ireland obviously played a lot better, so I think both teams will be right to go this weekend.
Been a bit of mild controversy in the way that Ireland dealt with Israel Folau over the last week or so. Some of the analysis would suggest that what Ireland were doing was putting bodies in front of where the ball was going to land, and we think that's kind of cute and intelligent and how you play the game, and I guess maybe you guys are wondering if it's exactly legal. That's kind of how international rugby works these days.
Definitely questions to the referee about blocking lines, but every team in World Rugby does it. Every team in top-level rugby does it. I think probably what we noticed on the weekend is that they had a couple of guys in front of Israel, and in our eyes it was pretty obvious. But we've sought clarity from the referees, and I'm sure that they'll be looking out for that this weekend.
Yeah, this is one of the things I think that a lot of people don't really fully appreciate, that the discourse with referees, it's ongoing, and it's fairly common to sit down in the build-up to a game and say, well, this is exactly what we're going to try and do. So Mark Robson said that he had a cup of coffee with the referee ahead of the first test, and the referee had explained what you guys had told him about what your intention was in terms of your defence and being really quick off the line, trying to hit the line actually at pace and sprinting. And I wonder, did you guys know that he was going to talk to the media about that? Is that fair game, that whatever you're talking about should be out there and it should be quite transparent?
Yes, I believe that's the way it's meant to be. So anytime we have a meeting with the referee, the opposition team are invited to that meeting as well. So it's all meant to be transparent. It's not so much about trying to get one up on the other team. It's just making sure that the referee's seeing the game the same way that we see the game. And we obviously need to adapt to the way the referee refs early in the game, but it's good to know what he's thinking before he gets into the game.
One of the things as well that we've been interested in over the course of this test series is just the relative health of the game in Australia at the moment. And, we look at the quality of play, and particularly in that first test, as you said, with just a 6-day turnaround, and the beautiful football that all of the individual players and the skill set that they have seem capable of of living on the field, and yet at the same time we're reading in the background some of these stories about the game not being as popular as it once was. What is the truth about where rugby is in Australia, and how difficult is that battle just to win hearts and minds at the moment?
Very difficult, yeah, very difficult. I think a lot of it stems from Super Rugby, so particularly the Trans-Tasman rivalry. So, we've got big competition with New Zealand, obviously with the Bledisloe Cup at the national level, but throughout Super Rugby as well, there's the three traditional countries that sort of have played that. We've now got Argentina and Japan, but the big rivalry really for Australian teams is New Zealand. And we haven't been faring well against them over the last couple of years. And even before that, it was a fairly scattered record. So it's really difficult to sort of promote rugby when teams are losing every weekend up until the start of the test season. And I think there's really good support for the national side in Australia. What we're seeing is that next level down is struggling to find support. So we're certainly in the process at the moment of trying to fix that competition, both in terms of the skill level and depth of player talent within Australia, but also the format of the competition to see whether more people will be interested in it.
What is the expectancy of the rugby union sporting public in Australia at the moment? Is it to win a World Cup next year?
It's hard to say. I certainly haven't spoken to people about the World Cup, and even as a team, I mean, that's a long-term goal. I know there's a lot of talk in Europe about the World Cup, and teams are sort of, particularly Ireland, are using this tour as a bit of a build-in to the World Cup to see how players will play away from home and significantly away from home. For us, because of the landscape of rugby in Australia, we've been very much focused just on this June series, and we haven't gone any further than that. We've got to get rugby back on the map, and we sort of do that generally by having success at the top level. So we've been really focused on that. On the back of the June series, we get into the Rugby Championship, and then on the back of that, we'll start to get real preparations for the World Cup.
You guys obviously feel quite a responsibility to be part of that rugby story then, that, your job isn't just to make the team a better attacking force. I'll talk to you about that in a minute maybe, but that actually you feel part of Australian rugby culture, you understand the heritage and you understand where it needs to get to. Just even your ability to, or willingness to talk to us today, for example, the chances of us getting a member of the Irish backroom team to commit to a Skype from Australia are very low because they don't really feel like they need to do it. But you guys are far more open to just talking to people about what's going on.
We're certainly trying to spread the word that rugby's in a little bit of trouble in Australia. But like I said, I think it's the next level down. So we're doing everything we can to try and help that next level down. At the top level, there is real interest in the sport. I think because it's so strong around the world and we're competing against other teams around the world, there is a real following for the Wallabies. And we've seen that through this test series. I think the first two test matches were all but sold out, and the one this weekend is sold out. That's, there's a lot of Irish supporters in Australia, there's no doubt about that, but there's real interest in test matches at the moment. But our role, now that we're full-time coaches, and it's the first time Australia have had 5 full-time coaches leading into a World Cup, a year out from the World Cup, and we've got 5 full-time coaches on board. Our job is, yes, not only with the national team, but it's also trying to promote the game in Australia.
One of the most interesting pieces I'd seen recently was the value of the TV rights deal for the rugby league franchises was allowing them to attract the best teenagers, and that's kind of the next generation of rugby players coming through. There's no sign of it yet with the national team. The skill set, as I said, of your team over the last 2 tests has been absolutely phenomenal. So is that a concern into the future that some of those best young athletes will end up playing NRL instead of rugby union?
Yeah, that's been ongoing. That's been ongoing since the rivalry between the sports. And it's no different at the moment. I think we've certainly got a bit of a focus on how we're going to try and keep some of those talented young players in the game by maybe competing with rugby league in that market. But yeah, our focus, I think, our focus, particularly as Wallaby coaches and as a Wallaby team, is to play the best rugby we can possibly play, the most entertaining rugby that we can possibly play, so that people who see the game, even just briefly or the first time they've seen it, they're instantly attracted to the game, and we can therefore attract more people both following the game and playing the game.
I did want to talk to you a bit about that, because the team that you won the World Cup with, I was just looking back at the back line. It was such a beautifully balanced, and they were capable of being really aggressive, and they were also capable of the silky skills. They had pace, they had brawn, they had brains, they had kind of everything that you would want in a rugby team. And it did strike me that you had all that skill set as well. As a coach, when you were coming out 10 years ago from playing, how easy was it for you to coach players who maybe couldn't do all the things that you could do as a player? What was that transition like for you as an individual?
I guess the transition out of being a player into the coaching environment is fairly smooth in that you know how a team runs. But the hardest thing for me, and I think for most coaches, is trying to see it from other people's perspectives and understand that the way I probably saw the game and the way that I'd be trying to explain it, if I was playing in that position, would be different to someone else who's got different skills and sees the game differently. So that was probably the biggest transition over the first couple of years, was really understanding it from someone else's perspective, understanding their skill set. And I think that those first 2 years were a real growth for me, because I think that the hardest thing in a team environment is understanding how you fit into that environment first and foremost. And then once you sort of get a handle on how you are perceived by other people and how you perceive other people, then you start to get a little bit of team cohesion.
Is there kind of a sense that you're getting in terms of how long it takes to kind of do your time, I suppose, in the backroom team with any sort of rugby setup at the moment? Because we look at the Ronan O'Gara situation at the moment, and there seems to be a general sense that his next step after his current job in New Zealand will be a head coach job somewhere in the Northern Hemisphere.
Right. There's no expectation on that from my perspective. I think I've done a bit of head coaching with the Brumbies for 4 odd years there, and certainly took a lot out of that. And I mean, my transition to head coaching was fairly quick, I'd have to say that. And I was still learning when I got the position of head coach, which I think just about every head coach has to go through at some stage. And now sort of sitting in this assistant coaching role, it's really good to sit back now and see it from the other perspective. So I've really no plans after this gig with the Wallabies, which is up until the World Cup.
You talked about having different perspectives, and I wondered how actually having played different positions so famously, so for people who are unaware, you start your international career as a fullback and then suddenly get catapulted into the 10 position about a year and a bit out from the 99 World Cup. At that point, you obviously had to think, I need to look at this a little bit differently and think about life a little bit differently and think about positions a bit differently. What was that transition like? Was that easy enough for you at the time?
It was, yeah. They gave me enough time. So it was, prior to Super Rugby in '96, which was when I first was capped for the Wallabies as well, the year before that I was playing halfback. At the end of that year, I was playing outside centre for a couple of games. I got picked for the Brumbies as an outside centre in the first game of Super Rugby. And by the end of that year, I was utility back for the Wallabies and sort of really focused on playing fullback. 2 years later, I had an opportunity to play 5'8", and it was fairly seamless because the coach at the time gave me. He was very open and upfront. He said, "Look, we've got 6 games until there's anything really serious on board, so we'll give you these 6 games to try and find your feet." My first real game was a test game at 5'8", so it was. If I probably sat back and thought about it, I would have been quite nervous, but it all just rolled in. It was sort of a week before he told me, and I got into the game and he said, "Don't change anything, just play the way that you're normally playing, and we'll adapt from there." And we were lucky enough to play England in that first game. I think we smashed them 66-0 or something like that. So
it's quite a hat-trick, right?
Yeah.
It's not a bad debut as a 10. So what was the difference? It came naturally enough, but like in retrospect, and now as an attack coach, what is the difference between 10 and 15?
It's just the time that you have, really. I mean, 12 is probably harder than 10, but the amount of time you have before the opposition get to you. So as a fullback, you've got pretty much all the time in the world, unless it's a contestable kick, but you sort of throw yourself into that. If it's a long kick, you've got plenty of time to size up the opposition. As a 5'8", you've kind of got to make your decision before you get the ball because the defence is right on top of you. So, I think it's your preparation before you get the ball is the most important thing. And then, I really struggled. I played 12 for a couple of test matches as well, and I think that was the most difficult position for me to play because I'm not the biggest sort of a guy, and when the pressure's coming on you with two passes, you've got to be a little bit more physically built to withstand the contest that's about to happen.
Yeah, because there's been a debate around this with regards to Joey Carberry up here at the moment, and I know you've obviously been focused on your own team, particularly around the first test when Carberry started for Ireland, but I'm not sure what your take is on that situation with regards to him having a little bit more time, obviously, at 15 and showing his on-the-ball skills rather than him kind of playmaking from 10. It is a debate that's still up in the air. It seems to have come to a conclusion where 10 is going to be where his future is at, but at the same time, I'd be interested to hear your take on that, whether or not he can still have a future at 15.
I guess, for me it was, just talking about my personal experience, it was an opportunity that was created because players were retiring. When I first played my first test at 5'8", it was because there was no one really in Australia who had that experience, and they gave me the opportunity. So I guess that's what you're talking about in terms of Rob potentially retiring soon. I assume that's what you're getting at, and potentially Joey moving to that position. I think he's very skillful. There's no doubt about that, and I see that he has the skills for both positions. I like what he does in attack at 5'8". I think he hasn't had a lot of time there. I know that he plays a slightly different game to Johnny, but I think he's equally as dangerous, probably more dangerous with ball in hand as a running threat. But I think he sees the game really well, and I think he's got enough speed as well to play in that fullback position.
Your official title, I think, is attack coach, but it seems to me that the titles around rugby coaching were designed in the late 90s and kind of aren't really fit for purpose anymore. That if you're a coach who is focused on attack, then ultimately you have to understand defence, because so many attacking opportunities come from turnovers and quick ball off turnovers and knowing exactly what to do when the game becomes unstructured. Sure, you can have set plays off restarts and line-outs, and your maul needs to work and all that kind of stuff, but I guess to be a proper attack coach, you really have to spend a lot of time looking at defence and how teams are setting up. So you kind of have to be as interested in defence as attack if you are nominally an attack coach.
That's one of the situations that we have here in Australia with Super Rugby. We've got Daryl Gibson is the Waratahs coach, and for the last couple of years he's taken over as head coach recently, and for the last couple of years he was the attack coach, and he switched roles, and he found it really easy to jump into the role of defence coach because, that's basically my job. I'm looking at defences the whole time and trying to work out where the weaknesses are, and from that I guess you identify what are good, strong defensive systems and which teams have them. So, I'm pretty well versed in looking at all that. And when I was head coach, I had a real priority on defence. So that's certainly a passion of mine. But at the moment, there are so many intricacies to attack. It's defence is kind of black and white to me. I think that it's a really logical part of the game, whereas attack is very difficult. It's very chaotic. You've got a lot of personalities, a lot of different skill sets, and a lot of different situations that are thrust in front of you. So, I'm enjoying the challenge of really trying to knuckle down and understand every different aspect of attack from obviously not my perspective.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because I would have said that's how you played the game. That your description there of a bit chaotic, lots of different personalities. Like you could be a sit back and kick the ball. You could also take the ball to the line. You could have a jink. There could be a very late delayed pass. That could be a short pass. That could be an offload, and knowing how to try and fit those players and that skill set into the modern game is what's going to take the game to the next level and make it, again, one of those spectacles that people want to watch, right?
Yeah, it's a real challenge, I think, because when we were playing, I don't think the defences were as good as they are today. I don't think the athletes were as good as they are today. So there were a lot more opportunities from tiring bodies, from athletes who weren't as agile. And we were pretty good at, as a team, we were pretty good at identifying those weaknesses and exploiting those weaknesses. I just don't think those weaknesses are there anymore in defence. Guys are fitter. You get your subs on, and those guys obviously had an impact off the bench. So, the challenge really is, and the way that we play, and I know it's the way that Ireland play as well, and most teams playing internationally around the world play with some sort of system in their attack. And we're quite structured, but within that structure, very similar to Ireland, within that structure, the guys have got one or two options. And within those one or two options, we really give the players the freedom to try and play what's in front of them. And I think that's the key, and that's what we always used to do before there was any structure in our game. Really, it was kind of play what's in front of us. We're just trying to offer those solutions to players now in smaller spaces.
Cheika wrote this really interesting piece before the first test in the first-person narrative on one of those websites. I can't remember. It's not the Players Chronicle. It's the Australian version of it, although there's a big disclaimer that they're not connected with it at the bottom of the piece, where he talked about he needs to embrace science and is constantly striving to learn as much as he possibly can. And it was just interesting because obviously we followed Cheika really closely since his time at Leinster and would have kind of heard that from the players, that he wasn't just the caricature of the loud, angry Australian coming down and shit kicking, basically, that there was also this other very curious and interested element in his makeup. And I just wonder what that's like to work with, and how that relationship came about, and how that kind of call, when that comes, are you straight away, yeah, I definitely want to do this? Or how did that whole process work for you?
Coming on board with Czech, you mean?
Yeah.
He actually asked me a couple of years ago, well, quite a few years ago, before I was fully hooked up with the Brumbies. He asked me to do a gig with him. I'm not sure where, somewhere overseas, and at the time I wasn't quite ready for it, and sort of knocked him back. And then he came knocking again when he sort of took over and was looking for his staff. And it was an interesting period because we were competing against one another. So he was Waratah's coach and I was Brumbies coach, and there's no bigger rivalry in Australian rugby than Brumbies versus Waratahs. There's a real hatred. I think probably every Australian franchise hates the Waratahs, but the Brumbies and the Waratahs have had a long-standing rivalry. I think because we've both been two of the more successful teams in Super Rugby. So yeah, it was kind of, and it's the same in the Test arena. You know, you when I was a player, used to hate these Waratahs and Reds players, and then you'd have to come together and in the space of 2 weeks love one another because you're playing a Test match against the All Blacks. So kind of the same situation with Czech. I mean, I'd sort of learned to hate him because he was a rival, but I think, you know, it didn't take me long to realise the calibre of the man and the fact that I wanted to be associated with him. And I've got full respect for him now. I understand how he coaches and where he's come from and what it means to him. And I think, you know, what you're saying there before in terms of embracing the scientific side of the game, we're always trying to find that little bit extra because the game at the top level is so tight. And you can probably see that with, you know, Six Nations, or if I just look at the England run, I know we're in Ireland at the moment, but if I look at the England run, you know, they had an unbelievable record of however many games in a row, but a lot of those games were won by less than 5 points. And then you flip it, and the games that they lost have been less than 5 points as well. So the game at the top level is such a tight margin that you've got to find those little 1%ers here or there. And what I've seen with Czech since I've been on board with him is that he is constantly trying to improve himself and the team. So it's not just a stagnant, I'm happy with where I'm at. He's constantly looking for something new.
I know you said that you're not really thinking beyond this Test series at the moment, but you have been linked with being Cheika's successor. And look, it makes perfect sense that somebody from within the setup would end up taking the team forward. But for that to happen, you have to have a good World Cup. And for that to happen, you've got to get the team functioning now, 18 months out from it. So it can kind of understand exactly why you have to be very much focused in the moment. And yet at the same time, it sounds like you do want to be an international head coach at some point.
Look, I'm not ruling anything out at this stage, but I think there is a real focus, and you know, I'm sort of someone who lives in the moment. Probably saw that as a player. Nothing really fazed me on the field, and I don't plan too far ahead. My time management is probably my worst aspect, so I'm not thinking too far ahead. And genuinely, I've got to start thinking about it, obviously, about what I'm going to do afterwards. But I'm trying to put everything into, for the time being anyway, particularly through this June series, trying to put everything into getting the guys prepped and ready for the game this weekend.
You mentioned there a couple of moments ago about how your opinion of Michael Cheika had changed as being an opposition coach to being inside the camp with him. How do you think, just on a completely hypothetical situation here, how do you think your opinion of Eddie Jones would change from being a player under him to being on his coaching staff? Do you think that dynamic would change wholeheartedly, that you would get a completely different view of what Eddie Jones is like as a coach if you were coaching alongside him rather than just playing under him?
I know Eddie pretty well, and I know how hard he has pushed his staff over the years when he was with Australia, when he was with the Brumbies. I know how hard Eddie works himself, the hours that he keeps, and I know the standards that he wants to keep both on and off the field. So, you pick that up, particularly, I think, working with Eddie as the coach and one of the senior players, you understand the guy a little bit better. And, since retiring myself and since Eddie's been overseas, we've been in I wouldn't say constant communication, but we keep connected with one another, and I know the pressures that on any coach at any national level, but it doesn't get much bigger than England with the expectation of the RFU over there.
How do you view his current struggles at the moment? Because it seems kind of hard to get a read on whether or not the incredible run that you spoke about there a moment ago is the real stamp of Eddie Jones, or whether the current struggles is the real stamp of Eddie Jones. It seems like it might be somewhere in the middle.
Oh, no, I wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't read anything into the last couple of games with Eddie. I mean, everything's done for a plan with Eddie. He thinks long term. He's very good at orchestrating long term plans, and you really got to take a lot of things into consideration. You don't want to have a perfect run into a World Cup. You need to have a bit of a hiccup to understand how to deal with adversity, because that's what the game's about. You're never going to have a perfect game. And I would say that they've had a lot of changes as well, forced and unforced. And I wouldn't be saying anything about the form of England right now, because I know Eddie's a bit of a master planner.
That's interesting. Maybe Ireland's hiccup is going to come this weekend. Obviously, you clearly stay fairly well abreast of what's going on in this part of the world in terms of the chatter around rugby, and you know how obsessed we are about the World Cup as a nation, and it's our holy grail to get beyond the quarterfinals. Maybe we should start talking about trying to win it as opposed to get beyond the quarterfinals. But as a player, what difference did it make to you as like a 25, 26-year-old to have won the World Cup? What was the change that brought about? Or was that actually just enough in and of itself, kind of as an achievement as a player? Well, we've done that now, and that's just something to be crossed off. It doesn't make you a better, more confident individual afterwards.
No, I think it makes you more confident on the field. There's no doubt about that. I don't think off the field it makes you more confident. It's always a team struggle on the field, and probably off the field. It's a team. It's combining as a team is the biggest challenge. So when you achieve something like winning a World Cup, it's never about the individual; it's about the team. So I think we were very respectful of the team that we had at the time. We were very lucky to have had the coaching staff and the run into the World Cup. So we didn't take anything for granted. I think it just probably gave me, on a personal level, a little bit more confidence when I was out on the field to be able to control things, because there is another level of pressure and expectation when you get to a World Cup.
And obviously winning the final, it's not a routine victory as finals go, but it was clear that you guys were the best team in the final. In the semi-final, it wasn't quite so clear, and you do have, as you said, nothing phases you on the field of play. You do have a moment where the whole world telescopes to an opportunity for you to win the semi-final. What do you remember about that now, and do you ever lean on that experience?
No, because it wasn't something I'd planned. It was just something that happened. So, well, maybe that's it. In terms of my time management, I probably just I work off the cuff a little bit better than I do when I'm planning it out. It was just a special moment, but like I said, it was all of those, even those special moments that I had as an individual, wouldn't have happened without the team there. So, as a player, I was non-fussed about all of that stuff, particularly any individual achievement. But the older I get, maybe the more sentimental I get, and I look back on those memories certainly fondly and proud of what we achieved.
Well, here's the thing: if the team had lost the final, no one would remember the drop goal in the semi-final. So I can totally understand why you have to plug into the team mentality. What do you remember about the drop goal itself?
Well, I've seen it a few times now on YouTube. People seem to bring it up every time I go to South Africa. But it's at the time it was going in at full time. The assistant coach Tim Lane just whispered in my ear and said, "If you get an opportunity to take a field goal in this extra time, don't waste it." And I guess that was in the back of my head. We as a rugby nation, we never really plan for field goals. We don't plan to win games with penalty shots either, where we sort of always prided ourselves on running rugby. So there was no game plan, there was no setup for a field goal or anything like that, unlike South Africa, who clearly had them. And I remember we sort of had a hit up. I gave the ball to Gracie off the line out, he hit it up, and I was just trying to kick the ball dead because it was all, in my head, it was we just have to play down that end of the field. Really conservative sort of nature, let our defence do the work, put them under pressure as much as possible. And I thought I'd just kick this ball dead and we'll get 22 and we'll keep the pressure on them that way, because we were a little bit unstructured coming out of that line out, so it wasn't the perfect scenario to attack from. So that was it. In the back of my head was I'll just kick this dead, but it didn't go dead, it went over. I was pretty lucky.
Is it true that your eyesight was really bad and you only get your eyes lasered afterwards, so you couldn't quite tell?
No, yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, but I think that was the beauty of my game, is that, I felt a lot of things. It was a lot of peripheral vision and pick up movements as opposed to specific detail. I knew the posts were down there, down the middle of the field. I knew where the field was. I struggled to see the corner flags and I couldn't see the touch lines because that was all a little blurry, but I knew where the posts were.
And just as a matter of interest, when you did get your eyes lasered and you could suddenly see everything, were you like, whoa, this is a bit weird?
Oh, yeah. That was a British and Irish Lions series. And that was, probably something that I regret. Looking back on my career, it was something that I was a little bit disappointed with, because it was exactly that. It was the week before the first test and everything was detailed and my depth perception was well out. So I would see guys clearly and expect that they would be, because in my old vision, they're blurry until they get to the point where I'm about to hit them, versus everything was so clear I couldn't judge that depth. So, yeah, I was quite disappointed with the decision to have the surgery before that series, and then obviously the way I played through that series as well.
Yeah, I mean, how long did it take you then to get normal again, to kind of go, okay, that's fine, I understand you're this far away?
Yeah, about 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
and then obviously a benefit. There's no doubt about having better eyesight is a benefit on the field.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, listen, you've been really generous with your time. As I said, it's great to have somebody in your role speaking so openly ahead of a big test series this week. It's been a brilliant test series so far, and best of luck this weekend.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you.
Thanks a million. Stephen Larkham there, the attack coach / defensive obsessive.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff there at the end. I'd heard the rumours as well about the eyesight. I wasn't sure if it was true or not. It's also as well, I hadn't really thought about the idea of actually getting your eyes lasered in the middle of your career and how mad that transformation must be, especially as an out half. Like, it's a brave thing to do.
Yeah. I can't remember how badly he played. I mean, they obviously end up winning the test series against the Lions, so all's well that ends well.
Yeah, 100%. Like 4 to 6 weeks it took. I mean, like, presumably he does it while the Lions are kind of trundling into those warm-up games in the weeks leading up to the first test, and he's kind of just ripe for the picking in the first test. Does he play? He plays the full 3 tests, does he?
I'm just looking that up now. You keep talking away there. You keep everybody interested, Owen.
British Lions test 2001. Scrolling down to teams.
The report doesn't work on the Wikipedia report is like a... Oh yeah, no, it's going to work now. Just click on the link, Ger. That's it, yeah. So lionsrugby.com/history/593.php question mark.
It's I'm sure
the 2013. That's nonsense.
That's you clicked on the wrong test there, to say the very least. He was probably like the whole idea of getting your eyes lasered in the middle of your career, as any position, is a is like a fully beneficial thing you would have thought, until you realise that the way I view the actual pitch is something that's completely ingrained into my way of thinking, into my brain. And maybe, okay, you get used to it after 4 to 6 weeks, but there is a whole slew of muscle memories that you've built up over the years, the weight of pass that you put on to reach touch. And why are you smiling now? You've got...
I can't find it.
You haven't found it.
I can't find it.
But either way, it doesn't matter. He's managed to tell us there that it was a 4 to 6 week gap. It was okay. Everything worked out okay in the end. And they all lived happily ever after is the Stephen Larkham laser eye surgery story right there.
good fill-in. Top quality fill-in there, Owen. I have no clue what you said.
That's how the story ends.
I've literally no clue what you've said for the last minute and a half,
ends.
but you did a great job. That's brilliant. Right, what's that? We're just tuning in there. We hear some... Well, what does that music mean?
It can only mean one thing. It can only mean our favourite Muscovite, John Duggan's on the line.
JD, come on in.
Jaron Owen, good morning.
How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Bright and breezy.
Yeah? So yesterday you were at Senegal. Proper scenes.
Is the goal you're talking about?
Well, just the fans, the way they cleaned up after them, stealing the Irish fans, best fans in the world, like just wrestling it off as really easily, like candy from a baby.
Yeah, they were great, Jaron Owen, and before the match I was taking a few snaps of Polish and Senegal fans together with their flags, and they'd never played each other before in a football international. And if I was in a police cell with a hooligan, I'd love to just show them the snaps and say, guys, this is how you need to behave as a football fan. Luckily, hooliganism is not as prevalent as it was 30 years ago, but we saw at the Euros that it could resurface. And obviously, club football, it's been still a bit of a blight in the game. But the fans, there was probably about, I'd say 80% of the crowd was Polish, the 44,000 at the Spartak Stadium. But the Senegal fans that were there made themselves heard very loudly with their band. They were playing. It's like one of these American football bands. They were just playing for the whole game, would not stop. I'm wondering, did they actually see any of the game at all? Because they were just in this party mode for the whole time and making themselves heard. And then, as you say, cleaning up after the game, which is great snaps on the internet about. And Japan would normally do that as well. So, yeah, I think they deserved the win. A 2-1 victory. It was an own goal to start. A Gay shot deflected off Tunek, who was coming into the team for Poland instead of Kamil Glik, who they really missed in terms of the defence. And then the second goal, was pretty mad. Mbaye Niang was a bit of a trouble past. Was once a French under-21 player, 23-year-old now. Was injured. Poland didn't kick the ball out. The assistant referee eventually waved him on. They forgot he was there, and then Krakowiak hit a pass which was under-hit. Szczęsny, as they call him in Poland, rushed out like a headless chicken, 40 yards, missed it completely, and Niang just slotted it into the empty net, and that was really too much for Poland to come back from.
Was it the worst kind of comedy of errors you've seen in a World Cup finals, John?
I've seen worse. I've seen Kuwaiti. I remember Kuwaitis invaded the pitch in 1982, the Sheikhs and that kind of thing. That was kind of funny. I think if I can think about it and give it some thought, I could think of worse things happening.
And Roger Milla.
René Higuita. Yeah, there you go. That's the gold standard of madness. But it's
domino effect, John. The Krakowiak back pass was terrible. The Bednarek intervention was terrible. Szczęsny's intervention was terrible. There was 3 of them in it. Like, one of them just had to not mess up and everything would have been fine.
Well, it serves Szczęsny right for all his trolling of Tottenham over the years on social media. So, you're talking about the Senegal fans. Then you see the other side of it, because there was so many Poles on the way back. I was with all the Poles, and just the silence, the absolute silence of defeat, and just the somber mood of probably 30,000 of them going to a World Cup game. And now they know they've got a real uphill struggle in that group. But it was what football was about, just that atmosphere before the game. And the fact that the Poles cheered the Senegalese national anthem, thought was a beautiful touch. Mane was quiet, by the way, just plays a little bit deeper than he does at Liverpool, more on the left side of midfield. And I'd love to see him in the more attacking guys for Senegal.
It's interesting you talk about the silence as well, because that first week of the World Cup is the happiest week because everybody foolishly believes they still have a chance, but now teams are actually legitimately starting to get knocked out of the competition proper. Egypt are gone, they're going home. We know that there's no way that they're going to make the next round at this point. Mohamed Salah, one of the best players in the world, a shadow really of his own intentions and his own abilities over the course of the tournament. Didn't play in the first game. Big debates yesterday on TV. I saw Damien Duff making the point that, like, how can he be fit for 90 minutes yesterday and not play even a little bit in the first game when you actually had the opportunity to turn it around? And look, you know, they made those decisions and they're going to have to live and die by them. But it's a pity that Egypt didn't perform at the level. It's a pity that Salah wasn't fit to play in this World Cup. And ultimately, when the tournament is over, nobody's going to remember that. But at the moment, it's no harm us taking a moment to go, it's a, you know, stuff like that. You know, you want the best players in the world playing fully fit.
Yeah, it's sad because it's only their first appearance since 1990, and they've never won a World Cup game. And I was watching the game last night in a bar frequented by Russians, but is an Irish bar, called Paddy's. You would have maybe seen on Off the Ball, the Twitter feed, the video I put out when they scored when the full-time whistle went. But yeah, it's disappointing. Karma hasn't really worked for Mo Salah, has it? In the Champions League final on his birthday, seeing Uruguay win very late on, and then yesterday. So if I was a Brazilian tactician or coach or Chichi or whatever, maybe I might be resting Neymar for the Costa Rica game because he hobbled out of training, and maybe they need to see, you know what, we can deal without Neymar before maybe he aggravates the latest injury he's received. So it's disappointing, but as you say, these things get quickly forgotten about. Peru have got an uphill struggle after their defeat. Colombia now losing to Japan yesterday, and the pristine nature of the beauty of anticipation is beginning to get a little bit darker for some countries, and then for countries like Mexico, it's still very much a massive high.
We were having a discussion a bit earlier on. Given that Neymar, that was his first game since February, I'm making the case that actually it might be better for Brazil to have no Neymar than not fully fit, not fully functioning, and yet still demanding the ball as much as Neymar will do, still hogging those free kicks, still hogging all the corners and stuff. That actually, if he's not fit, and this injury might not necessarily be the worst thing that's happened to Brazil.
Can they do without him, though? Can they really do without him in the team? Is he just too good a player? I don't know if the injury is the same as the broken foot that he had, which they said he'd fully recovered from. He did play well in the friendlies, but of course friendlies, unless you're German, are not the same deal. So I just maybe leave him out of the Costa Rica game. But I think if Brazil are going to win the World Cup, they need a fully fit Neymar, as you say. But if they don't have Neymar, they might not win the World Cup. So you're in that kind of chicken and egg situation, I think, with it. That's what I would say. But Russians were beeping their horns, taking the flags out of the cars last night.
That's the first time you've seen that?
Yeah, it's the first time I've seen that.
They're starting to believe?
There's a curiosity here. I've heard that in cities where there are no stadiums, that the fans in regional cities are very, very up for it. They're getting into fan zones, and those were maybe 50% full a week ago, but since Messi and Ronaldo came into the tournament, these are beginning to get full, and the interest is beginning to peak. Obviously, with Russia probably getting the best draw, the inside straight of draws you could ever get in World Cup history in terms of the Saudis and Egypt.
Hot balls all over the place.
Yeah, and look, he bringing Zuba on from the start was a good thing for the coach yesterday. I thought they didn't get on in the last couple of years, the pair of them, but he scored. Dennis Shev has scored 3 goals now in 2 games, and look, it wasn't the best first half, pretty frenetic, only a shot on target each, I think. But once Russia got that own goal to give them the lead, they really never looked back. And it's not beyond the realms of possibility that if they draw with Uruguay, they'll top the group. A goal difference.
Regardless of what it's going to be, if they want to make a quarter-final, they're going to have to stop Portugal, or they're going to have to stop Spain. Have you seen enough at the back from Russia to suggest that they could handle someone like Cristiano Ronaldo?
No. I think Russia have had a great draw. Egypt were dealt an absolute sucker punch against Uruguay. As we say, you said Jer there correctly, that Salah is not fully fit, and he's carrying a team has been on his shoulders. He did so in qualifying, and they did an easy enough qualifying run, much like Senegal. But Senegal yesterday have players. They have players like Koulibaly, they have Mane, they have Gay, they have got good players. Senegal, I'm not sure if they know how to play football to the top level in terms of tactics and what they need to do with the ball, but they have players, and they shackle Lewandowski well. But I can see Spain and Portugal coming through, possibly against both sides. We'll have to see a great improvement from Uruguay today.
Yeah, so you've moved. You were obviously in Moscow. Are you in Luzhniki now after the overnight train, or is that tomorrow?
No, I'm at the metro at Luzhniki now because I'm going to Portugal, Morocco, which starts at I think it's 1 o'clock Irish time, and then I'm off to Nizhny Novgorod this evening on the overnight train ahead of Argentina, Croatia tomorrow, and then England, Panama on Sunday. So
right.
I have to make sure I don't fall asleep on the train and wake up with nothing. And that's a bit cynical, obviously. But you have that fear of I always have that fear in the dark that am I going to wake up in Siberia because I've missed a stop? So but it's still so it's a pretty heavy run in terms of where you're going. You're constantly on the move, but it's a brilliant adventure. I was stopped off for a cup of tea yesterday, and they served the tea in a CCCP mug with a hammer and sickle, which is kind of a cool thing. And that's out up on social media. So I'm preparing to do my John Duggan World Cup diary, the latest instalment on offtheball.com, to detail my excursions around Moscow, and which is, I have to say, like any other global city. It's like Paris, it's like Berlin, it's got some fantastic sites, which I hope to see more over the next few weeks. And very safe, and the people have been friendly. So I wouldn't be, obviously governments do what they do, but I wouldn't be in line with a lot of the fear and the apprehension that was pervading the newspapers and the television coverage before the tournament.
Looking forward to seeing Ronaldo?
Yeah, I saw him, Jerry, at the Euro semi-final when Portugal beat Wales. He was great that day, scored a header, got them to the final, which they won. I saw him in 2007 when Manchester United took Tottenham apart at White Hart Lane in a 4-0 win. He was playing more as a winger back then. He was younger, in his early 20s, but he's turning old, Ronaldo, isn't he? Even when you look at the close-up shots of his body, like, he's just a phenomenon. I'd love to know what his metabolic age is, his biological age, as opposed to his 33-year-old age, because he really is. He's even getting younger as things go on. So Morocco, though, I don't think they're pushovers. They had 68% possession against Iran. They did well in qualifying, and I think Ronaldo did possibly act as a bit of a cloud to Portugal the other day against Spain. I think they were definitely the second best team, but his brilliance got them out with a draw.
John, good stuff. Enjoy the overnight
thanks so
train.
much.
I hope it's safe.
Hopefully, yeah, I hope to see you on the other side.
We will definitely. Enjoy the game today. That's John Duggan, our man in Moscow for the duration of the tournament. You can read his stuff on offtheball.com. And a reminder that a special for Off the Ball listeners, subscribers and users, go to offtheball.com/boilsports. Spain to beat Iran is 10-1. There are some T's and C's, but not many. So it's a very special offer, exclusive to Off the Ball users. Offtheball.com/boilsports. You need to go through that link, click the link. And if you want to bet on Spain to beat Iran at 10-1, if you're a new Boils customer, that is available to you. Or you can take the Ronaldo to score and Portugal to win at 2-1. Which is an enhanced offer for existing customers, which isn't bad either. No,
that's pretty damn good. Morocco are a good side. They're like, Portugal will probably win that game, but they kind of suffered a bizarre defeat to Iran on Friday when Iran were time wasting and then subsequently scored the winner, which is hilarious.
Very Carlos Queiroz, though, right?
Yeah, it is. And like, it's been a long time. I don't think they've won a game since they beat Scotland in the World Cup of 1998. So it's over 7,000 days since they've actually enjoyed the feeling of winning a game in the World Cup. I don't think today's going to be that day somehow. I think that run is going to go on a little bit longer, and I think they'll lose to Spain as well, which kind of deems it to be a long old time. And Iran, as you mentioned, Kieraz's side, up against Spain later on. Spain are going to win this World Cup, as we've already established, as we've got unanimous agreement on. And this is just the next step really towards that. I'm not sure who I want to see Russia get knocked out by. Do we want to see Spain knock them out? Do we want to see Portugal knock them out? It seems from the way John Duggan's talking, either one of them will have no troubles against Russia. I'd have my doubts really at the moment with regards to Portugal. And I've got a feeling that if we do see Russia topping that group and Portugal coming second in Group B, that we could see a little bit of a shock. And Cristiano Ronaldo looking around him and looking up at the stands and seeing Vladimir Putin's glaring smile down at him as
in the
last 16.
And at that point, you can see Russia beating.
I can see Russia beating Portugal.
You can see Russia going all the way to the semis, because that's what happens when you host a tournament. One of the teams gets to go to the semis. And, oh, look, there's only Russia here. We don't even need to worry about Japan.
No, they will probably lose to France. I think it's France, or will it be Brazil or Argentina maybe in a quarter-final. They'll lose to one of the big boys in the quarter-final. Portugal can be deemed to be not one of the big boys, so it wouldn't be an outrageous shock. It was just an anomaly, Ger. That's all it was.
Yeah, no, it definitely wouldn't be a shock. Right, Richard Cooper is part of Richard's Russia is going to be part of our output over the course of the duration of the World Cup. Here he is last night channeling Roy Keane and Martin O'Neill. He's going to be live on OTB AM on Friday. Have a look.
I haven't seen Martin. No, I haven't seen Martin. But one of the things that struck me recently about Martin is that he was kind of absolutely defending, the way they played against Denmark. And if it wasn't for the fact that, they scored 5 goals, we could have won that game. It was literally on the verge of that. But I'm not sure our Roy and himself...
Bilic.
Bilic and himself the other day was fantastic. I mean, you really wonder why Roy is in the studio, because he just looks like he hates talking.
Yeah, he does. It's like he has it honestly is with Roy sometimes, like he has contempt for himself that he's doing this, but he's sort of doing it anyway, and doing quite a lot of it.
I don't know about that, Joe. Nonsense. What are you doing talking about football? You played it to a high level. Well, Keith played anyway. Not at a high level, but did his best. Got sent off in the Euros. Let his country down. That's fine. Absolutely fine. I suppose at least he turned up. But did his best. His haircut, embarrassing. You want to sort yourself out, Keith. You go on national television. Take a leaf out of Dara's book, is what I'd say. Give yourself a proper haircut, a bit of grooming. Yeah.
More goodness like that coming your way on OTB AM this Friday morning. And of course, just a reminder that we have loads of top quality Gaelic football action coming your way this weekend. Reporters at all of the big games, and looking forward to seeing exactly what happens with this Dublin Laois game on Sunday.
Are you really looking forward to what happens?
I mean, I'm looking forward to... Are they going to be like the All Blacks and kill teams, put 60 points on them, the way the All Blacks would have done traditionally? Or are they going to play within themselves and try and keep something in reserve? Because we're breathing down the neck of the Super 8s.
We are, but the thing, just on the All Blacks comparison, listening to Larkham earlier on talking about the Tasman Sea and the way the New Zealanders kind of peer over the Tasman Sea and look at their close rivals and think to themselves, I hate you. You think you're better than us, Australia. You're bigger than us. You've got a bigger population than us. You're more famous than us to a certain extent as a nation. Better jerseys than us. Quite often we've got a lot of World Cup scars from you guys. We're going to go out there and we are going to pulverise you. Somehow I don't think Jim Gavin's peering over in the direction of Port Laois when he wakes up and it's 2003, we're coming for you, revenge.
Probably no motivation to do it, but the All Blacks do it to everybody else as well. But they'd kill Italy 80 points.
They rarely play Italy.
But in the World Cups, whenever they play anybody who's no good, they just go, yeah, we're going to kill you and we're not going to stop scoring. It's not like...
So do Ireland, though. If Ireland play Canada in the World Cup, they tend to keep scoring. that's just... when it's so easy, when you're so much better, it's quite easy to do that. I'm not sure does that necessarily point to...
Well, so on Sunday, what's going to happen?
There was little parts of that game against Longford where I thought to myself, is that the foot kind of coming off the gas just a little bit? Not massively, because they obviously beat the spread, but there was a goal on there, whoever it may have been, and you elected to put it over the bar. Whereas at the start, you had that killer instinct when Michael Darragh-Macaulay passes across the goal and Dean Rock finishes.
They spent a lot of the second half going for goals when you were thinking, just take the points there, lads. Take the points. Yeah. We did. Right, OTB AM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. You saw Roy Keane ripping Keith Andrews a new one there in the form of Richard Cooper. Good morning to you. How have you recovered from the savaging that you received last night, Keith Andrews?
Morning, lads. Yeah, he was funny, wasn't he? I'm a big fan of what they do anyway, so it was a bit surreal getting it right in front of my face.
Yeah.
What's it like for the first time when you hear an impression of yourself done to your face?
I don't think he does the best one of me. I think it's the other lad, but I wasn't going to tell him that last time.
Oh, don't worry. We're clipping it and sending it to him right away.
I wouldn't expect anything less.
So what we charged you with the responsibility of picking an Ireland team. If somehow miraculously we had made it to this World Cup and we're suddenly up and running, and you've gone for a pretty interesting formation. You've gone for 3 at the back because it's like fashionable at the moment.
I just think going back to the Turkey game in March, and then he tried it again against the USA. I just think it suits our personnel at times, the way we can set up. We all know we haven't got an out-and-out goal scorer at the top end of the pitch, so it gives you a chance to get 2 up there. I don't think we have a lot of talented wingers at the moment. I think our strength lies in central defence, central midfield, and I think we've got very good wing-back type players. So yeah, I think when you look at the whole squad, I would favour that system, and I hope he perseveres with it.
Okay, so just to tell everybody what the team that this is your fantasy first 11. So Randolph in goals. We've got a back 3 of Rice on the left, Duffy and Coleman. Coleman obviously on the right, and then the wing backs are Robbie Brady and Doherty. It's Arter, McCarthy and Hendrick, the 3 in midfield, and then up front you've gone for Maguire and Walters. So the first thing that strikes me is we don't have a lot of goals in our team at the moment, Keith.
Jay, we're not going to have a lot of goals in our team, so I think you need to get used to that. What we've got, I think, behind that is we've got real aggressive, physical players, ball-playing wing backs. I think we've got a holding midfielder, James McHugh. I'm picking this game I'm picking this squad team, everybody fit, obviously, and playing well, or hopefully playing well at club level. Centre halves that are comfortable stepping in. Really like to see Seamus Coleman. I mentioned it during the USA game. I was on commentary, and I would have liked to have seen a little bit like what I suppose Gareth Southgate's done with England with Kyle Walker right-sided centre half and Kieran Trippier as the right wing back. I'd like to see that Seamus Coleman and Matt Doherty, because Matt Doherty's had a really good season, but Declan Rice been able to step into midfield. Those wider ones of a back 3 have to be able to step into those little uncertain areas where there's going to be a bit of congestion to be able to distribute the ball, whereas in its infancy against Turkey we were on different wavelengths. You'd seen Shane Duffy stepping in, hitting long direct balls, some of the midfielders dropping into pockets to try and get it off, and so we need to be singing off the same hymn sheet. But I like the look of the team. Look, I suppose the one thing after I did the team, actually, I realised James McLean wasn't in it.
Yeah.
And I knew you were going to ask me that, so I thought I'm going to get this in. Look, I think he's been outstanding. Where he fits in a 3 at the back, I'm not quite sure. He played wing back defensively. Forget about it. And you could throw that at Robbie Brady to a degree as well in terms of defending. Obviously isn't his forte, but he has shown he's capable of it. Whether he'd be able to do that against the top nations, I'm not sure. But I don't like James McLean playing as a front player. I just don't think it suits him. He can set the tone, and I think he will play there. If this is my team, obviously, if Martin's team, he'd be straight in it. So I have got a bit of sympathy for him because he's been outstanding.
In Martin's team, would he be in instead of Johnny Walters? Would he be in instead of Maguire? Where do you think he fits?
Yeah, I think we need John Walters for the style of play Martin employs. I think he'd probably be upside alongside Walters, depending on how sharp Johnny is, how much club football he's getting. It's imperative he moves in the summer, gets playing regularly again. But yeah, he's probably up alongside Walters for me. But I think Seanie Maguire has to start. I think he's had this little bit of rest now in the summer. I know it's been through an injury, but I think that'll do him good. And I think we'll see Sean Maguire again kick on to another level after signing that contract a couple of months ago. That'll be a nice kind of for peace of mind for him, a nice bit of security. And I think it'll allow him to focus again. And every step he's taken in his development, he's taken it very, very well.
Would that team have broken Peruvian hearts on Saturday night, do you reckon, Keith?
Depends how much coaching they get on.
That's a cryptic answer. If they got adequate coaching?
I think we would have given a decent account of ourselves. I think we've seen a lot of mediocrity at the tournament. Understandably so, because there should be more European teams qualified. Would we have lit it up? No. I think we would have been, depending on what group we got, obviously we would have been able to grind it out and probably produce that one really good performance. But I think when you look at our squad, there's a lot of made of it in terms of, look, we haven't got this, we haven't got that. We still have a nucleus of a very good team and subs to come on. And we've got a little bit of injection of youth over the last few months, periphery players, the likes of Alan Brown coming into the equation as well. So look, I think there's reasons to be optimistic.
What about the coaching? You just, when you said with good coaching this team could do anything, what about the coaching at the moment? Is it good enough?
Probably not, no. Because what you've got is, in my opinion, you've got that squad of players that I sent into you yesterday, barring John Walters. I'm trying to look at the most senior ones on the squad I've got in front of me. I think it's only John Walters, maybe Shane Long, because he came over that little bit later to England. All of these players have been coached through an academy system where they get every little detail, they get coached to the umpteenth degree. And Martin doesn't manage in that way. He doesn't manage in that manner. It's player driven. Do they get enough coaching? Do they give enough organisation? No, I don't think so.
That's not going to change. So are we staring down the barrel of a bad qualifying campaign next time around? And like, is this hurtling towards the inevitable where it looks like a manager has stayed on one campaign too much again? Possibly.
I think we need to give it a good go. It's not going to be easy. There's room for error within the next stages of qualification. That's our only saving grace. It's all about a seeding process, the first few games. But we've got tough opposition, Wales and Denmark, as we well know. So it's going to be tricky. I think he has to stick with a similar system. Whether he'll do that, probably not. The players need to know what they're doing. I go back to the way they're used to their club level. They get given all the details. They get given the information early, whether it's set pieces, the way they're playing, patterns of play, phases, whatever way you want to call it. They don't get it at international level. And I know time is of the essence at international level, but I still think we can do a little bit more.
Yeah, it's like, how long does it take to kind of transform that to something where you look around and you think to yourself, this is looking very rosy now? I mean, like, just even reading this morning about Uruguay and Oscar Tabarez, who came in after they failed to qualify for the 2006 World Cup, and some of the quotes that Jonathan Wilson had in his piece in The Guardian saying that the Uruguayans would have bitten your hand off if you'd even given them the style of play that they would have played with the last day against Egypt last Friday. Just the passing style rather than kind of the very one-dimensional approach they used to have in 2006, which is kind of rings familiar to the way Ireland currently are at the moment. Now, granted, obviously, we can't really compare ourselves to Uruguay given the playing resources and the history that they have as a footballing nation, but it seems that they managed to turn that around from 2006 to 2010. I'm not sure, was it a 4-year plan specifically, but it was certainly a plan that's allowed them to qualify for every single major tournament since, and it's been done in a manner which is very attractive on the eye.
The big problem we have is, we all know it's a little bit of a transitional period, whatever way you want to call it. The big issue we have is we are hosting games in 2 years' time. And if we are not at that European Championships, hosting games, playing them in Dublin, it's going to be a disaster. So I think that's a big reason why Martin stayed on with the FAI. They felt he was the best person to get them through to then. And I think that'll be it. I really do. I can't see him going on beyond that. In terms of the evolution of the style of play, I don't think we'll see it under Martin, because Martin manages in a certain way. He will have this squad of players available to him, and at times it's going to be frustrating. At times it'll be player driven. At times Martin might come up with a little bit of magic, or whatever way you want to call it, to get that key result, just to get us over the line. But I think it's going to be tricky in terms of us getting there. One last question. You've got Coleman as part of a back three. Like, traditionally, when you think back to the Martin O'Neill teams at Celtic and at Villa, when he would have had three at the back, I mean, at Villa it was more actually a two with Richard Dunn and Collins when they were at their absolute peak. But we did have three at the back at the peak at Celtic when they were having those great European nights. He did have rampaging, marauding wing-back. So maybe Coleman can use his pace and be that force on the right side for us, and he can actually put another central defender in there. So it's
we're going to be unbelievably hard to beat, but actually Seamus Coleman is our main attacking outlet, and that's something we can get behind at least.
Yeah, look, that's my back three. I don't think Martin will go with that. I agree with you. I think he goes for physicality. You might see Duffy going to the right, Kevin Long coming into the equation, or Kieran Clark, depending on what he's doing at club level, and as a strong back three. Seamus Coleman is one of our most creative players, and I understand that you're taking that away from areas of the pitch where he's not going to get into. But for the initial part of the attack, where he's able to step into full-back areas, as we see him do time and time again, he's very, very comfortable on it. I would just like to see that little bit of a relationship blossom between him and Matt Doherty. Matt Doherty's head must be falling off, by the way. The season he's had with Wolves going into the Premier League, look, I think defensively he still has a little bit of tweaking to do on his game, and he'll be tested more next year in the Premier League. But to not get involved in any shape or form in those games that have just gone past for Ireland is a disgrace.
West Ham just spent 20 million quid on a defender. Is this something we should be worried about?
Say that again, Jay, just broke up.
West Ham just spent 20 million quid on a defender. Is this something we should be worried about?
Look, my issue with the manager coming in is will he play the same system? Because last year David Moyes played a back five, which obviously gave them another option at centre half. There was an extra body there. So Declan Rice, more often than not, I think he got 25 games in the end, found the place. Will he trust him? Does he see the same things that David Moyes sees? Does he see the same things that we're all starting to see in a green shirt? We can only hope. But I've said this before, we need to do what the Welsh FA have done, where the younger players that have come into the equation, regardless of what's happening at club level, if they don't play much games in the first couple of months of season, he still plays for us.
Yeah.
Now look, you can't do that long term. I understand that, but he still plays for us. He is in our starting 11, and for the short term, I think that's at centre half. For the short term, if he plays a back four, I think it's in a holding midfield capacity if the likes of James McCarthy aren't available. Because I don't think we have a lot of talent in there that are natural holding midfielders. But long term, certainly, I think he's a centre half for us. But no, I wouldn't be too worried. But it's going to be interesting to see how it goes pre-season, and obviously the first game of the season, we'd all look to see him in the West Ham starting lineup.
People have been tweeting us and getting in touch to say they weren't exactly sure. They didn't see the bit where Richard Cooper did Keith Andrews on the show last night. So just for them, Keith, this is just for them.
Thanks.
Have a look.
How do you think, and don't let present company affect you, how do you think Keith Andrews is doing?
I think he's doing a great job, Joe.
Yeah.
I think he's doing really well, I think he's put himself about a bit on the panel. But, he's not willing to necessarily commit to RTE. He's got TV3, he's got RTE, he's got Sky. But I think he's doing a fantastic job. He's infiltrating himself in a fantastic way. His infancy, and I think he's just fantastic at making up the words. And obviously, having said that, the infancy and the general masticate as a collective is doing superbly well for Russia.
I don't fully understand. I think I sort of know.
Yeah, well, I think Peter Collins would understand what that means, but probably the only one that would.
You've made it now, baby.
It's funny. His Roy Keane one was amazing, and his Peter Collins actually.
How have you found the punditry so far? Is it? It's exactly the same as all the other punditry you've done. It's just these are World Cup games.
Yeah, it's just very different in terms of the teams and the frequency of them. 5 games in the space of 3 days, which was full on. No, it's been good, and you obviously learn how a different company works, how they work things in terms of build up. Obviously, half times you get a little bit more time than you would at Sky, not so much ad breaks. But no, it's been enjoyable. I think overall the World Cup's gone quite well so far, and I can see it heating up even more as the crunch games kick in now over the next week to 10 days.
Owen is all in on Spain at this stage. Having seen all of the contenders really at this point, who's going to win it?
Yeah, I'd said before the tournament, Spain, Brazil for me. I didn't like the look of the dynamics of the French team. The Germans had some injury issues where they were never going to be up to match speed going into it. Look, the Germans will probably kick on and get very far in the competition. I've no doubt about that. But Spain, in terms of the performance, as good as I've seen, even though they drew. But you can't legislate for the types of goals that Ronaldo scored. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But I thought they were outstanding. And Brazil, Neymar is a little bit of a problem. His ego, the way he goes about things, it's not conducive to a team spirit. But having said that, the manager has been very good in terms of not letting this Brazilian side be as reliant on Neymar as it has been in recent years.
Yeah, sorry, okay, just briefly on that point, because we were talking about this earlier on. I was making the point that if Neymar is injured and if he's out, actually that might not be the worst thing for this Brazil team at the moment, because he hasn't played a competitive game really since February when he got injured. Also hogging the ball, hogging the attention, and it has been about Neymar as opposed to about Brazil. But with him gone, suddenly a bunch of those players can step up and go, actually, you know what, I can be the next superstar that wins a World Cup for Brazil.
Well, Jay, it's not as if they haven't got very, very talented players to come in and replacing Douglas Costa, Firmino. They've got talented players. I think they've got probably 14, 15, 16 players that are top notch. And you're right, Neymar, but you've got class all around them. It's not as if he's it's not as if it's Salah with Egypt. You know, it's not as if I'll get the ball to him every opportunity. Like Argentina are doing with Messi, by the way. The reliance on him is ridiculous. So I'm with you. I think the balance of the team might end up being better. But I do think he'll stick with him. He's got obviously that little knock that he got in training yesterday. I'm sure that's just much ado about nothing. But I think he'll get sharper. Whether he drops the ego, drops that, and for the greater good of the team, I'm not so sure.
But the balance of Portugal would be better if you took Cristiano Ronaldo out of the team, because everybody's on a level playing field. Like, balance to a certain extent. Once you take out somebody who's so stratospherically better than everybody else. Exactly.
The supporting cast is so much better.
Like, I'm not sure do I agree with the idea of balance in this regard. I think sometimes you've got to have a little bit of balance to actually allow the scales to be trampled upon by this outrageous talent.
No chance, Owen. What have you been sniffing this morning?
What?
What have you been sniffing this morning? It's not Portugal for me, right? Portugal, he's the only world-class player. With Brazil, they've got probably not world-class, but they've got unbelievably talented players that can still win football games, like Coutinho, for instance. Jesus will get up and over. Will he get the goals? I'm not so sure. But they've got ridiculous talent all around it. Portugal are a little bit different. They have to bow down to Ronaldo a little bit. And even on the subject of Ronaldo, they aren't. I know he got a hat-trick the other night. They are not as reliant on Ronaldo as they have been in recent years, because they have evolved as a side. They've got better attacking players, the likes of Bernardo Silva. Guedes is a very, very talented player. So they do carry a threat attacking-wise, even without Ronaldo. But obviously, he is still the talisman.
Did they just not show up the other night? Then the rest of the attacking players, like Bernardo Silva, obviously hooked. Andre Silva, disappointing enough in my view. Is it a matter of just being Spain and how strong they were defensively?
Yeah, I think the way that Spain dominated the ball, they were chasing shadows for large parts, so especially in the second half. I thought they were sensational. The way they kept the ball, it was Spain at their brilliant best. Isco, I thought, was outstanding. And what they've done, the Spanish team, which I thought was more evident the other night against Portugal, was they recognised the strengths of Diego Costa. They hit him a little bit earlier, because they haven't always done that. You've seen Diego Costa making runs, not get the ball, become frustrated, become a little bit agitated. And that's when you know what he's like when he gets into that state. He's liable to do anything. He becomes a bit of a cannon. So I think they recognise his strengths and they started to utilise it a little bit more.
Keith, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Cheers, lads. See you soon.
It's Keith Andrews with us there. He's going to be on the radio this evening on Off the Ball as well from 7 o'clock. One final bit of Richard Cooper to finish this segment up. We're going to talk about the Volvo Round Ireland yacht race in just a minute, but this is Richard Cooper talking about the tension in the air, I think, between Slaven Bilic and Roy Keane.
Definitely there's friction there that I don't think they were planning on between Bilic and Keane. You know, it's not like, I don't think it was a directive by the director. You know, I think it's just happened, and it was, you know, Bilic just talking about Croatia having beaten Nigeria, that all they have to do is get a draw with Argentina and beat Iceland, and Roy's like, so that's all they have to do. You know, it's easy to say, it slips off the tongue, but it's just so they'll argue about anything. You know, and I was kind of saying earlier, they'd probably have an argument over, you know, who's going to win Love Island. You know. I think Megan is favourite for me. I think she's very, very good. I think Megan's overrated, to be honest. You know, I think Alex is the best chance. You know, Alex is going to. I think Alex has done very well. Danny Dyer's just not up to it. You know, she's not good enough. And that other fella's a plank. Adam Ayal's a good lad, you know, he's okay. He's a good lad, but he needs to get a haircut like you, Keith.
Absolutely.
All right, you're very welcome back. Dave McHugh is here with us. How are you doing, Dave?
Very well, thanks.
We're talking about the Volvo Round Ireland race. This is something that I think has been part of the sporting consciousness for a long time, and it kind of flares up from time to time as people kind of tune in and tune out. But this year's a big year for it.
It is, yeah. It's a biannual race, so it flares up every 2 years. And as you know, sailing is not the biggest sport in the world in this country, but you know, the success of Annalise in the Olympics and things like that, people are more aware of it. This race has been running since 1980, so it's got quite a strong pedigree, and it's compared to the likes of the Sydney to Hobart, the Fastnet race, the Caribbean 600, the Middle Sea race. And it starts from Wicklow every 2 years, and you sail in whichever boat you're in non-stop around the island, try to get back as quick as possible.
How long does it take? What's the...
It's a bit of a challenging question to answer because you're so reliant on weather,
right?
Your boat, your tactics, your strategy. I suppose on average, it probably takes most boats 4 days.
Right,
I would think it's probably an average. So the record in a monohull is 50 hours. So you'd hardly sleep in 50 hours, you know, on off. Most boats are between sort of 30 and 50 feet that compete. And it really, the answer is how much wind, what direction is it blowing from, and what sort of tactics do you choose?
So they've released this video, and you'll see it shared on social as well. The scenery is amazing, and it looks like it's kind of an incredible thing to do. Have you done this race?
I have. I've done it 3 times. I did it first time in 1994, which is a long time ago, on a 38-foot boat. I did it in 1996 and won it on a 35-foot boat. With Michael Boyd, big ears, and the last one I did was I think 2008 on an 80-foot boat.
So what's
Slightly
the difference?
Different?
Loads of different categories.
Yeah, different categories. I suppose you could liken it to golf in that it's a handicap race. So, you know, typically the biggest boat or the longest boat or the fastest boat is the first boat home.
Okay.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they win the race.
Sure.
So you're handicapped. So quite often it could be a boat that comes in 2 or 3 days later who, like golf, has sailed to its handicap and wins on what they call corrected time. So I think the year that we won it in 2006, I think we were 4 days, 11 hours and 27 minutes, I think. And we won it, yet the boat that actually got home first was in 2.5 days.
Okay.
So it's a handicapped sport, and really from a spectator perspective, the focus is on the start, the focus is on Wicklow, and it's on that kind of notion of come down and see boats. As kids, we all grew up boats, planes, cars. You know, so it's a get down to Wicklow, and it's an experience the festival, watch the boats sail, and following that, it's follow it on a tracker, much like the Volvo Ocean Race. Daily updates, how are you doing, which direction you're going, where's the weather coming from, and it's very strategic, and you need an awful lot of luck.
What sort of strategy will be employed?
Very much depends on the weather. I mean, I had a little look at the weather for next week, and it looks like we're going into another high pressure this weekend. Weather looks sunny and warm, generally means lighter breezes, sea breezes. You know, there's been races in the past 2 or 3 where it's been stormy. There was one race a couple of years ago that was postponed for 24 hours because it was too windy to start.
Right.
So, you know, wind is your friend. Wind gets you around the island as quick as possible. So if it's light winds, it's likely to be a long race, and it will favour the smaller boats. If it's a very windy race, it'll favour the boats that get round quickest. And, you know, as a sailing race goes, I know this is kind of hard to explain to non-sailors, but, you know, you go around a different corner every day. You go around some of the most iconic landmarks in Europe, the Fastnet Rock, Hinstra Hall, you know, down past Rathlin, Mew Island, down the Irish Sea. So every day is something different. And that's what makes it really interesting. And 704 miles if you draw a straight line around, but, you know, depending on the weather, you could end up sailing 800-900.
How close to the coastline do they go?
Again, a question that can only be answered depending on what the weather is doing, and also the tide. So what would give you a strategic advantage?
Is there an average ideal kind of, like, are you quite far out, or do you try and hug it as much as possible?
There are times where you can't see the land. I mean, particularly going up the west coast, you know, really when you leave Kerry
you
get to Mayo, it's a straight line. You know, land is visible, Aran Islands, etc. There are other parts, you know, when you're coming down the east coast where, you know, you see Wales on one tack, and an hour later you can see, you know, Louth on the other tack.
Okay,
so, you know, you're not particularly far away. It's not. You're not crossing an ocean. You're sailing around an island. So, geographically, it's quite an attractive race. And places like the Fastnet, you know, it's incredible to see it. I mean, it's an iconic rock. Being able to see it from the sea.
Now you can be unlucky enough and go around at 2 o'clock in the morning and see just a flashing light, but it could also be the daytime.
Presumably, like, obviously when you're racing around Ireland, the thing is the changeable weather. So in the middle of a race, your tactical approach can be thrown completely out the window.
Yeah, so on board, the average crew is probably 8 to 10 people. So everybody has specific roles and responsibilities, and probably the key role on the crew is the navigator or the tactician. And it's that person who assesses the weather conditions, the tidal conditions, the positions of the other boats, also what's going to happen next, and makes the decisions as to where you go on the race course and why. So there's a lot of onus on tacticians. So there's weather routings, there's planning, and then there's obviously, lifting your head up and seeing what's happening. A crew of 8 or 10, you work in watches, probably, watches of 3 or 4. So you're on a rotating cycle of 3 hours on, 3 hours off, 3 hours on standby. So if you're at sea for 4 days, that's reasonably fatiguing physically and mentally.
I'm sure you're completely exhausted at the end of it.
It's shattered. I mean, I was trying to think, how would I explain this to you? It'd be like 10 of us in the studio here at 45 degrees, wet, with a band playing drums for 4 days, sleeping and being woken every 3 hours and being given something to do physically.
Why is it 3 hours? Why would you not be better off like a 6 hours and get a proper bit of a kip and then...
It's a really nice suggestion, but as time goes on, your efficiency becomes less, and your concentration period, you can't concentrate for long.
For 6 hours, okay, so that's the issue.
Then you're trying to intake food, you're trying to eat, if you're up at 2 in the morning, if your watch is from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m., when do you eat? Do you eat at 2 when you get up, or do you wait for breakfast at 5 before you go back to sleep?
Yeah.
You have to fit in your food before you go back for your 3 hour sleep.
So talk me through a 2 to 5 hour shift in the graveyard slot when it's dark out, you're on watch. What are you watching for?
Well, you're sailing the boat because you don't stop. So you've somebody steering or driving the boat,
and that's
trimming the sails.
And the steering is all done, I presume, kind of like you don't need to see the rocks there mapped out.
Well, you do, but it's dark, so you're steering on instruments.
Okay.
So you're steering on lit instruments, a compass, a wind angle, a heading, and boat speed. And your idea is just to keep the boat going as quickly as possible for non-stop. So you can't just get up at 2 o'clock and go, it's a bit dark, we'll slow down here and take it easy.
Yeah.
You've got to drive the boat at the same speed that you would if it's the middle of the day.
You're totally reliant on the instruments for that.
Yeah, I mean, you can get fantastic moonlit evenings where it's as bright as, a midsummer's night.
Yeah, okay.
Or you can get wet, windy, dark, you can't see anything. So you're totally reliant on instruments.
Okay, and so the 4 people on the crew at that point, one of them is sailing, one of them is...
So there might be somebody driving the boat, somebody trimming the sails, and 2 others just there floating. It depends on how your watch system is structured. But you can't steer the boat for 3 straight hours. You go crazy.
Really?
Yeah, well, as you get tired.
Yeah.
I mean, how you get up for those 4 a.m. flights to go to a match. You're pretty tired by 7.
That's our wake up time every day for the breakfast show now. So.
Yeah. So, I think as a human challenge, as an adventure, it's a fabulous thing to do. I mean, it's like a rite of passage for people who sail.
How many participants?
So we've just over 60 boats this time.
Okay, wow.
The record is 63. It's probably about the capacity where it needs to be, critical mass. And the boats vary from 30 feet to, in this case, 60 feet. So Wicklow Harbour is the centre, the hub where the boats come 2-3 days before, do their prep work. They all go out then on Saturday morning, between 10 and 11 a.m. The race starts at 2. There's a mass start between a naval boat and the pier. We have an air corps display. We have a festival, and it's really it's an event. It's a come down. It's a watch the boats, walk around, see them before they go out, have an ice cream, watch the start of the race. Wave them around Wicklow Head, which is about half an hour, and then really the only way to follow them after that is online through imagery, video, and through a tracker which we have is called Yellow Brick.
There was a great book written about the start of ESPN, and one of the big key moments in ESPN's history was in America's Cup, where they managed to finally get the technology to be able to track the boats and actually film from the boats. They didn't have rights to top quality sports events. They invested in this and put all their money in it, and one of the American teams went really well against, I think it might have been a Russian team perhaps. So there was proper there was narrative around it, and they realised that if we put technology on any sport and explain what's happening to people in the live environment, they're going to sit there and they're going to watch it on TV.
Absolutely. I think if you look at the America's Cup and how it's evolved as a sports event, and the technology and the camera angles and the overlay graphics on the race course and the explanation about wind and boat speed and tactics, it makes it much more digestible for a non-sailor. I mean, even I think one of the challenges we had around the Olympics, we're all following Annalise and her success, and you're trying to relay to people how sailing works with very little picture and very little data. So, I mean, we literally watched the races online. We looked at mark roundings, boat speeds, positional changes, and then we had to go on the television and try to explain to the general public how it worked.
Yeah, not easy.
The Volvo Ocean Race, and again, Volvo, they're a huge sponsor of sailing globally, and the Volvo Round Ireland ties in with their strategy, the Volvo Ocean Race, but they're using a lot of drone technology. So they're crossing oceans and they're doing these sort of races, but they could be 10 to 2 weeks at sea. They're able to launch drones off the boats. They're able to capture footage in the middle of the Southern Ocean, and then they're able to send it back via satellite communications to a media centre. So what we get to see is this wonderfully edited footage that could be taken, 2,000 miles from land. So yes, it is becoming a sport that, with technology is far easier to digest, but to the basic person who's just watching and wondering, it's an adventure race. It's 3, 4, 5 days at 45 degrees. What do you bring with you? A toothbrush and maybe a change of t-shirt. You're sleeping in wet sleeping bags if it's wet. Now, you can have lovely weather, it can be beautiful, calm, still, but it's going to take a long time to get round.
Yeah.
You see dolphins, you see all sorts of wildlife. You bond as a group because you have to, and there's a huge sense of, thankfully, and please God, never, thankfully, there's a huge sense of satisfaction in finishing something like this, and achieving that. I've sailed around this island 700-800 miles with a group of people, and certainly it's one of the highlights. And there are many highlights. It's not all misery. It's a highlight every time you jump up a couple of places on the leaderboard. There's a highlight when you see one of those iconic places like the Fastnet or the Tusker, and there's just definitely a huge highlight when you finish the race and go, wow, that's over. I just want to sleep.
Where is Irish competitive sailing at the moment, given we're halfway through the Olympic cycle?
High performance sailing, I think it's in quite a good place. I think they've got a very good structure and process in terms of bringing sailors through a pathway from youth to junior to international to Olympic. We're an island surrounded by water. Irish Sailing, and through their foundation fundraising, have invested quite heavily in a performance centre now for Dunleary. That's a huge step forward. We're never going to have 15 people at an Olympics in that sport, but we should have a consistent pipeline of people over the next number of years. Absolutely.
And in terms of growing the sport, obviously it's a participation sport, really. Like, that's what you want people to participate. What's the next step, and how does that happen?
It's a national governing body issue, much the same as the GAA or modern pentathlon or hockey. Trying to encourage people to try the sport. Certainly my first memory of sailing was in 1986, and I saw Simon Le Bon's boat in Wicklow for the start of the Round Ireland. I'd never set foot in a boat, but it was just that little piece of sailing and music and celebrity, and I said, this looks cool. So how do you get involved? You join a club, you go to a sailing school, try it. I mean, it's just a wonderful skill to have, to be able to appreciate and enjoy the water. I think, like all smaller federations or national governing bodies, there's a huge push on membership, there's a huge push on retention and development, but we're not necessarily funding the sports at the level they need to be.
Always the case.
Always the case.
Yeah, and it'll continue to be. So stuff like the Volvo Round Ireland is obviously, really important in terms of drawing attention to the sport and getting people to go and sample it. So people who want to go down to Wicklow.
Saturday the 30th, 2 p.m. start. Most people should try to be down for 10 or 11. See the boats, wave them out of the harbour, have an ice cream, be part of the festival, Air Corps demonstration, and a few other kind of niceties. And it's a fun day out. It's something everybody should do, and it's so close to Dublin, so why not? Fingers
crossed the weather's good for you as well. Dave, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us. Okay, so coming up tonight on, obviously World Cup Daily is live at
12:30.
Half past 12.
Caught me off guard there.
There you go. So we're going to hear from John Duggan. We're probably going to hear from Kevin Kilban today as well.
I'm not sure about that. Kevin Kilban is on televisual duty on the BBC later on for Portugal versus Morocco. We might catch up with him a little bit earlier though.
Have we established yet if he's in studio with Cesc Fabregas?
I'm not sure actually. If I was producing that show, I'd have Cesc Fabregas in studio for Portugal.
Just go on YouTube, everybody, and search Kevin Kilbane, Cesc Fabregas, and see what they think of each other, or at least what Kev thinks of Cesc. We're going to leave that one there until they actually do end up in studio together, and we can replay that video to both of them. Tonight on OTB from 7 o'clock, obviously World Cup updates across the course of the show and all the good stuff that you would expect. We'll see you bright-eyed and bushy-tailed tomorrow morning at 7:45. Until then, good luck.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.